It's been a while since I did a regular knitting podcast, so grab your knitting or crochet, settle in, and let's catch up. Hi, welcome to Music Maker. I'm Harriet. In this podcast, I've got quite a few projects to catch you up on, so I'm going to start with my finished object. My first finished object is one that I started working on actually in March of 2025, and that's the Stella quilt cushion pattern by Penrose. I've talked about it a bunch in previous videos, so I will simply say that the cushions are finished, and I will put some footage so that you can see how they turned out. I'm very happy with them. As I mentioned a bunch of times, for me, the stalling point, the point that really slowed me down, was having to work the garter stitch back on each of the cushions, but I'm very happy with them. The inserts that I picked were a little big, so they did stretch the garter stitch out a little bit so that you can kind of see a little bit of the insert, especially on the back side of it, but I'm fine with that. I'm just happy they're done. My other finished object, or objects in this case, is actually a small gift that I made for a young friend of mine. I made a cat for her, a stuffed animal cat, I guess about a year or two ago, and I at that time made some clothes for it, and since then she's become very interested in playing with this cat, so I made her a bunch of additional clothes. And so the pattern that I used is from Little Cotton Rabbits. If you've worked with any of those patterns, you know that they are nothing short of wonderful. They are, I would say, priced quite low for the quality of what you get when you purchase the pattern. And I don't usually like making small things, and particularly the idea of making small doll clothes with cotton yarn on US 2 needles is not something I'm usually excited about doing, but in this case I always love the result. And so that was my second finished object. So if you've been checking out my videos on this channel for a while, you know that I have quite a few long-standing WIPs, and so I've been spending the past month or so trying to make some progress on a bunch of those. So I'll start with a project that I actually began in February of 2025, and I actually thought I had worked on it this past winter, but no, that would have been the previous winter, and that is the Snow Sweater by Pernille Larson. So if you're familiar with this pattern, the body of it is just all one solid color, and the interest comes from the pattern on the sleeves, particularly on the cuff of the sleeves. So I finished one of the sleeves, and I will put some footage here to show that. I'm using Holst Super Soft Held Double. And so one of the things that I decided to do is to actually marl two different colors of the Holst Super Soft. So I think that I'm marling Ecru and a color called Iced to swap in for the snow white color that's on the original. I just kind of liked the idea of having a bluish white tint to the snow and thought it would coordinate really well. So basically I finished one sleeve. I have another sleeve still to do, but I decided that I would also get going on working on the body. So the sweater itself is knit, top down and in the round. So over the past month or so, I've basically just started working on the body of the sweater itself. So I'm not going to put footage of that on there because it's really not very interesting to look at. I still have to do a second sleeve for that, so yeah, again, I'm just trying to sort of make a little bit more headway on it because I really want to have this sweater to wear for this winter. I actually wanted to have it to wear for last winter but didn't get to it, so we'll see if we can do it for so that I have it for December and January of this year. Okay, so back in May of this year, I talked a bit about participating in Romi Hill's mystery knit along called The Color of Hope. And I actually had picked out the colors that I wanted to use, and I started on this mystery knit along. It's a shawl pattern, and I actually got through, I think, partway through clue number 2. And I had the sinking feeling as I was working on it that I wasn't going to like. I had picked a black color and then a much lighter color for the contrast color. And I kind of, as I was working on it, I sort of regretted choosing the black color for one of the main colors. I thought the contrast would look good, and I think it would have, but yeah, I just had misgivings about it. And then as I worked through clue 2, I was like, who needs lifelines? It's a lace shawl, we'll be fine. You'd think after 40 years of being a knitter, I would have learned a couple of lessons along the way, but no, the hubris is still there. So long story short, I realized that working on clue 2, my stitch count ended up off at one point. I thought, oh no, here, I'll fix it quickly doing this. What I did maybe fixed it, maybe not, I'm not even sure. But long story short, I decided you need to put lifelines in, and maybe black isn't the color you want to be working with. So I actually frogged what I had and started over. And I decided to use a very nice light green color that I have of Holst Titicaca, and I'm holding that double. And yeah, I've made it back through clue number 1, but as is always the case with shawls, they go very quickly through the first clue because you're working just a smaller number of stitches, but I am enjoying it. I am liking how it looks, and yeah, it's just something it's in my WIP pile, and it's something that I plan to keep working on. It's just one of those things that requires my attention because I have to keep consulting a chart, so it's not so great if you're just trying to kind of have a relaxing binge watch session or something like that. Speaking of shawls that require my attention, I am also still working on the brioche section of my Stephen West MusiKal shawl, which I began last October. And I am really close to the end on this one. I think I've got at least one more set of repeats, and then I have to do the I-cord bind off. So looking forward to possibly finishing this one up sometime soon. I also decided to return to a blanket pattern called Persian Dreams by Jenise Hope. And full disclosure, I started this blanket pattern at least a decade ago. And, you know, when I put the footage here, you can see why. All right, it's an amazing colorwork blanket. And you work basically a whole bunch of different motifs. You can actually just work repeats of the same motif if you want to do that. There's lots of variations for it. She has both a fingering weight version, and now she has a DK weight version as well. When I started it, I think the only thing available was the fingering weight version, so that's what I've been using. I don't mind that, but yes, it's just going to be slow going. But I knew that, you know, when I undertook this project, I was like, I just want to have something where I'm savoring the color work. I'm working it on a US2 needle. I'm using lots of different colors of Knit Picks palette, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. I'm relatively pleased that most of the motifs seem to be turning out about the same size, because we're talking about working color work over, you know, off and on with long lapses in between, over, you know, a decade or more. So I picked it back up, and I'm, you know, as always, really enjoying working on it. I'm also working on another blanket, because you can never have too many blankets, right? And this one is in a technique that I'd never used before, so I'm learning it. I did a whole video about this, so I'll put a link to that video down below. And this is the Beale pattern, and I think the artist's name is Anka Winterman, I think. I may have that wrong. I'll put it on the screen if I have it wrong. And this is a pattern called Beale. And I won't talk a lot about it, but it's something that I've really enjoyed learning to do mosaic crochet. So, you know, if you're a seasoned crocheter, like I am, and you've never tried overlay mosaic crochet, I have a video about it. I enjoy it. Highly recommend that you check it out. Speaking of learning, I also want to give an update. I am still working my way through level 3 of the Knitting Guild Association's Master Hand Knitter Certification Program. And I haven't put a lot into video form for you in terms of updates on that, because a lot of what I've been working on is either just small swatches, and also sort of with that, a lot of the writing components. So as part of, in completion of the requirements for the program, you have to write 3 book reports and 2 reports, and then do a lot of like drafting of pattern type things that accompany various swatches that you're working on. So it's just a lot of small stuff and a lot of stuff that's that you're working on in writing. But my goal for that is to kind of finish the swatching and the book reports and the larger sort of history reports by the start of September, because then the major component for level 3 is you have to design 2 patterns all your own. One pattern has to be an Aran style and the other has to be a Fair Isle style, and you can do, you know, you do a hat and a sweater, and you can choose which of the styles you want to do for which of the particular items. And so I'm about 99% sure that I'm going to do a Fair Isle hat and an Aran sweater. But those are big projects, and so I'm hoping to get a lot of the smaller component of level 3 done, so the swatching, the book reports, the history reports, done by the beginning of September, and then my brain can go into, you know, sort of retired academic mode where I divide the year up into semesters. And so my fall semester project, I think, will be a Fair Isle hat, and then my spring semester project will be an Aran sweater. And I think I'll have more to show you, you know, visually as I work on those 2 projects, because although there'll be obviously some writing component to it as well, there's also going to be a lot about, you know, selecting Aran cable patterns that I want to use for the Aran, and then also selecting color work that I want to use for the Fair Isle. So stay tuned, and you know, if this is the first you're hearing about level 3 of the Master Hand Knitter Certification Program, just know that I do have a playlist that talks about my work on level 1 and several videos talking about my work on level 2 of the program. Okay, so as if I didn't have enough to do, I decided that I wanted to do a couple of cast-ons as well. And the first one is a sweater pattern that caught my eye as a cat lover years ago. It's by Andrea Rangel, and it's called the Cat Knit Sweater. And it has this beautiful motif of cats in the yoke. And I've been going through a bit of a tough time over the last 8 months or so. So last year at this time I had 3 cats. This year I have 2. So I think I mentioned in previous videos that one of my cats passed away last November. She had been diagnosed with a brain tumor in April. Shortly after she was diagnosed, one of my other cats had lost a couple of pounds of weight without even trying. So she was diagnosed with what appeared to be gastrointestinal lymphoma. And so my one kitty passed away last November. My other kitty seemed to be doing pretty well. She was hanging in there. She was on medication. And then, one Monday morning, she just started not doing so well. And I went to bed at 9 o'clock at night thinking she seemed okay and would see what the morning would bring. Was awakened at midnight. She was definitely still not well. Seemed to be getting a little worse. Long story short, she ended up suddenly passing away in the carrier as I was taking her to the ER vet. And when I tell you that I only live 5 minutes away from the ER vet, I think that will give you a sense of how quickly things unraveled for her. So what I decided I wanted to do was to basically make a little tribute sweater for my two kitties. And so I chose some colors, and I'm using Knit Picks palette for this because I was able to get gauge with that. And I chose, the way I've chosen to do it is that the body of the sweater is going to be gray, and then for the yoke, for the cats, rather than doing the cats all in one color, I'm actually kind of changing things up and sort of working in a kind of combination of sort of Fair Isle and Intarsia to incorporate some of the different colors. So the idea, I'll put a picture on the screen of each of my two kitties, right? So one was predominantly gray, the other was predominantly sort of a you know, beigey tan with some black. And so the idea is that the colors of the sweater will reflect their colors. And so to do that, I didn't want to just use a single color of particular beige kind of working its, you know, for the yoke. And so I'm kind of mixing and mingling, and I'll put footage here. I didn't get terribly far on it yet, although I have made some progress, and I think you can sort of see how, you know, the ears of the cats are shaping up, and I'll also show you that, you know, so what will happen is each of the cats in the yoke will look a little bit different. And so I'll show you some footage of kind of how that's looking. And so again, I'm really enjoying it, but once again, I seem to have this habit of taking on these projects. I think it's because I really love color work. I end up taking on these projects where I have to be looking at a chart. And yeah, that's not always conducive to kind of just sitting and relaxing knitting. For me, that's always a little bit more of an intensive kind of knitting. So in that spirit, I decided to pick up a different sweater pattern, and this is a newly released pattern by Jennifer Beale, and she's a Canadian designer, and she has a lot of really interesting sweater constructions and sweater designs. She's got some beautiful shawl patterns as well. And so the sweater that I decided to start, because I'm able to knit from stash for this one, is called Bauline. And it's really just a very simple kind of construction, but I really liked the oversized look and the way it shapes up. And I had the yarn in stash that I could use. So I had a sweater's quantity of Cascade 220, which is a wool. And then I had a skein of Malabrigo, and I think the color is Azules. Put it on the screen if I have that wrong. And it's this kind of nice bluish color. The Malabrigo is actually a superwash, but I'm not going to worry too much about it because I'm just using it for the small stripes throughout the body. And basically I just have to remember when I wash the sweater, I'm going to be washing it by hand anyway because the Cascade 220 is not a superwash that I'm using for this. And so this has been kind of my go-to relaxing project. I actually just started it on Friday night and it's already shaping up really quickly. So I think I'll get the sweater done pretty quickly. I'm also really kind of proud of myself because for the Bauline is constructed top down in the round, and it suggests using a tubular cast-on for the neckline. I don't usually like to do tubular cast-ons or bind-offs. I don't mind doing it. I know some people love the way it looks, and for me, I think it looks okay, but I don't love it. But I did decide this time, since I had to practice my tubular cast-on a bunch for the Master Hand Knitter certification program, I decided let me use the tubular cast-on here. It is true that it would be nice to give the neck a little bit more stretch, and so that's what I did for the Bauline. So that's something that made it a little bit different from what I typically do. Drop a comment down below if you've been working on anything new yourself that you think I might find interesting. Chances are, if it's knit or crochet, I'm gonna find it interesting. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Have a great week.